Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we declare and assign values to multiple variables in a single line in Java programs? The answer is yes. In Java, it is possible for us to declare multiple variables and assign values to these variables in a single line. But with few conditions it is possible. Okay, if you follow these two conditions that I'm going to explain now, then it is possible in Java to declare multiple variables and assign values to these variables in a single line. What are those two conditions? First one is, all these variables that you are going to declare in the single line should be declared with the same data type. Okay, you have to declare these multiple variables with the same data type. If you want to declare these multiple variables in single line but with different data types, it won't be possible. That is the first case. Okay, if you want to declare multiple variables in single line in Java, you have to make sure that all these variables need same data type to be declared with. Okay, that's the first condition. Second condition is, the values that you are assigning to these variables need to be compatible with the data type that you have declared the variables with. Okay. The second condition is, you should not assign incompatible data to these variables. Compatible data based on the variables data type you have to assign. Then it is possible in Java to declare and assign in a single line these multiple variables. Okay. So let me practically demonstrate this and prove you that this is an example, guys. Okay. This is how it looks like to declare multiple variables and assign values to these multiple variables in the same line. But anyhow, I'm going to show you practically. For that, I'll switch to this project, expand this project. And here I'm going to create a new class. Right click new class. Okay. I'll just name it as class A, some random name I'm giving. With main method, I'll create. Okay. So in a while, the class with the main method will be created. Got created now anyhow. Now I'm going to create or declare multiple variables in the same line. Okay. And at the same time, I'm going to assign the values to these variables in the same line. Int A is equal to, let's say 9, comma B is equal to 1, C is equal to 5, D is equal to 7. You say it is possible. I'm not getting any compiler error. I can print out the details also. System.out.println. If I print the, sorry, let me type it again. System.out.println. If I print the variable A, the value that is stored in the variable A, that is 9, will get printed. If I say system.out.println B, the value that is stored in the variable B, that is 1, will be printed. System.out.println. If I say C, the value that is stored in the variable C will be printed. System.out.println D, the value that is stored in the variable D, that is 7, will be printed. 9, 1, 5, 7 should be printed in the output. Okay. So this statement in Java proves that we can declare multiple variables and assign values to this multiple variables in the same line. You see, it's working fine. What if I want to declare this variable A with a different data type, variable B with a different data type? Then it is not possible, guys. I have to declare them in separate lines. Or if I try to assign values which are not compatible with the variables data type, okay, the values that are assigned to the variables are not compatible with the variables data type, okay, then it's a problem. For example, if I say 7.5 for one of the variable, I'm getting an error here. Okay, I have to assign proper values which are compatible with the variable declared data type. Okay, so hope guys you got the answer for this question. The answer is yes, guys. When these two conditions are satisfied, then the answer is yes. Okay. So can we declare and assign values to multiple variables in a single line in Java? The answer is yes, with these two conditions are satisfied. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is a variable in Java? Let me answer. Variable is a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored. Let me explain in detail, guys, okay? To understand what is a variable in Java, let me explain here with more details. So what is a variable in Java, okay? Variable is a name, okay? It's a name given to a otherwise I'll write in a separate line, is a name given to a reserved memory location. Okay, it is a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored. Okay, this is what is a variable. If you don't understand this statement, no need to worry, guys. I'm going to explain something for you now. With that explanation, you will understand. Okay, for example, let's say this is a computer memory. Assume that this is some computer memory. Don't worry about all the in-depth concepts of the memory, computer memory, and how the Java will take care of the memory concepts and all. Don't worry about that. But high level, understand that this is a computer memory. Okay, so I'll divide this computer memory into multiple slots. I'll just split this computer memory into multiple slots like this. Okay, so here some boxes like this. Okay, here vertically also I'm splitting. So each and every slot can store some data. Okay, in this computer memory, in every slot, there's a possibility of storing the data. So when I create a variable, okay, when I create a variable and store data into that variable, for example, if I say int a is equal to some 9, the moment I say that, what happens is the actual data is what? 9. 9 is stored into one of the memory slot in this computer memory. Okay, in this computer memory, in one of the slot, the actual value or data 9 is stored. Now, if you see this, there is a memory slot. Every memory slot in this computer has some address case. Okay, so for example, this one may have some address like this. Okay, 10111. No one can remember this address because every slot have this kind of address, and there will be a lot of memory slots that you cannot even remember this. Like in your mobile phone, there will be a lot of contacts. Every contact will have some different number. Can you remember each and every mobile number that is saved in your mobile phone? What you do, guys, you don't remember the mobile phone number. Rather, you will assign some name based on the person's name. You will assign a name to that particular mobile phone number. Okay. Whenever you need to call that number, you will just search for that name and call that person, right? Here also, the data is stored in one of the memory slots of this computer memory, where we cannot remember each and every address of this memory slot in order to work with this particular data. Okay, to retrieve the data, to operate on this data. It's not possible in Java to remember every memory address of every memory slot where the data is getting stored with the Java programming and all. So what we do is we give some name to this memory location. Instead of remembering this data with the help of address, okay, this memory slot, instead of remembering this memory slot with the help of this address, which every memory slot will have some unique address. It's not possible to remember every unique memory address for every memory slot. So we are going to name this memory location. Okay, we are going to give a name to this memory location so that we can refer to this memory location using that name. Okay, so I'll give some name like A. In this example, it is A. You see, we clearly have given the variable as an given or named this particular variable with the A, which is a name, guys. Okay, using this name, that is variable name, we can refer to this memory location, and thereafter we can perform operations on this particular data. So now you understand this line. It will make sense now. What is a variable here? Here in this, clearly in this example, int A is equal to 9. A is nothing but a variable. We generally call A as a variable. Okay, but actual definition or actual understanding of the variable is, it is a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored into the variable. Okay, so variable is a name given to this memory location. Okay, to refer to this memory location. Variable is nothing but a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored. Guys, to refer to this memory location where the actual data is stored, we are going to give a name to the variable. Okay, so in simple words, variable is a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored, guys. Okay, so hope, guys, you got an idea what exactly is a variable. If someone asks you what is a variable in Java, you have to say that it is just a name given to a reserved memory location where actual data is stored. So why we have to give a name to a reserved memory location? So that we can, with the help of the variable, we can refer to that memory location. We cannot remember the memory address every time. Every slot address, if you want to remember, that's not possible. We have to give it some name. And then using that name, we will refer to the memory location where the actual data is stored. That's what is a variable, guys. Hope you got it now. But most of the people in the industry, when you ask anyone about what is a variable in Java, variable stores data in Java. That's what they will answer. Okay. In simple words, they will answer variable stores data in Java. Okay. Variable is something where we have in Java to store the data. That is the purpose of the variable, guys. Okay. But what exactly is a variable? It's a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored. But you can also, okay, give a second answer. Okay. First, you give this proper answer saying that it's a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored. Okay, technically. And theoretically, on a high level basis, you can say that variable stores data in Java programming. Okay, in Java programming, if you have to store data, variable is only means. Okay, if you want to store some data in Java programming means, without variables, we cannot store data in Java programs. Okay, simple words, variables store data in Java programming. Okay, Java programs are programming, whatever you want. Okay, and what type of data can be stored into these variables? What type of data can be stored into these variables? It all depends on with which data type the variable is declared with. If you declare the variable with int data type, integer kind of data can be stored into that particular variable. If you declare the variable with Boolean data type, Boolean literals only, Boolean data or Boolean literals can only be stored into that variable. If you declare the data with char data type, single letter characters surrounded by single quotes can be stored into that variable, and so on. Okay. If you declare that variable with the double data type, decimal values can be stored into that particular variable. Based on the type of the data type that you are declaring the variable with, that type of literals or data can be stored into the variables. Okay, fine. So again, variable is nothing but a name, just a name like a phone number and some phone number name, contact name, right? Contact name and contact phone number. Okay, it's like a name given to a reserved memory location so that we can refer to that memory location whenever we want to perform operations on that particular data that is actually stored in that particular memory location. Okay, fine. So let me practically demonstrate how a variable looks like and all those stuff. Okay, let's freshly create a new class for that. I'll create a new class, let's say class B. With main method, I'll create some random name I'm giving with the main method I'm creating. And inside this method, I'm going to create a variable int a is equal to some 9. Okay. Then double b is equal to 3.56. Okay. Then char t is equal to some s. Then boolean t is equal to true. And so on. I can create any number of variables, guys. All these things are variables. A, B, C, D. Okay. These are the variables are nothing but the names given to the reserved memory location where the actual data like 9, 3.56, single letter character s, true are stored. Okay. This data will be stored in the reserved memory locations, and to give a name to that reserved memory locations where this actual data is stored, we give a name to that reserved memory locations instead of remembering them with the memory address locations in the form of memory address like 101 and all those stuff. Okay, so variables are nothing but the names given to the reserved memory location where the actual data is stored, and based on the type of the type of the variable with which data type you have declared the variable, that particular data need to be stored. For example, instead of 9, if I try to store 9.5, you will get a compiler error saying type mismatch cannot convert from double to int. If you want to store 9.5 into this variable A, then you have to make it double. Otherwise, you cannot store. Only 9 can be stored now. Okay. So hope guys, you got an idea and answer for this question with practical demonstration in this session. What is a variable in Java? Variable is a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored like this. Okay. It is a name given to a reserved memory location where the actual data is stored. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what are primitive data types in Java? Let me answer. So what are primitive data types in Java? Primitive data types in Java. What are? So let me explain in detail now. Okay. Primitive data types are, first of all, non-object oriented. Okay. So primitive data types are, first thing about primitive data types are, they are non-object oriented data types. Okay, they are not related to any object oriented concepts in Java programming. Okay, so Java developers thought of keeping these primitive data types simple and basic level. Okay, they are used like anything. Okay, primitive data types are used like anything. So they wanted to make these primitive data types non-object oriented so that they doesn't consume a lot of memory, space, and performance. Okay, fine. So that's why primitive data types are non-object oriented and basic element level data types we have in Java. Okay, so that's the first thing. They are basic. Primitive data types are non-object oriented and basic data types we have in Java, using which we can declare variables. If you want to declare some variables, we have to use primitive data types case. Okay. So, and you have to understand about primitive data types as they are basic data types using which we can declare the variables according to the declared data type of that particular variable. We can store the compatible data into that variable. Okay. And they are non-object oriented also. Okay. At the same time, they are non-object oriented. So they are very basic and elementary level, and non-object oriented data types are called as primitive data types in Java. Fine. That's the first line. Oh, so what are the different primitive data types we have in Java? Okay. So now we understood what are primitive data types. Using these primitive data types, we are going to declare the variables, and these data types, which are called as primitive data types, which can be used for declaring the variables, are non-object oriented and very basic level. Okay, elementary level. So those are called as primitive data types. So what are the different primitive data types we have in Java? Byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean. Okay, byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean are the different primitive data types we have in Java. Okay, these are the 8 primitive data types. Okay, these are the only 8. Java only has 8 primitive data types in Java, starting from byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean. So coming to this first 4, byte, short, int, long, they can store integer values. Okay, so byte will store up to 1 byte. Okay, the size of this byte is the minimum one for storing the integer values, whereas short is the double size of byte. It can store a bigger number, integer number, whereas int can store double the size of short. Byte is 1 byte of size, whereas short is 2 bytes, whereas int is 4 bytes of size. Every byte is called 8 bits, right? So like that. Okay, I don't want to go in details in this as an answer for this question. Here I just need to answer what are primitive data types. I'm just explaining. Okay, all these 4 data types which fall into the primitive data types category can store integer values into them, but of different size. Okay, this one can store 1 byte of size, 8 bits. Okay, short is 2 bytes, that is 16 bits. Okay, this is 4 bytes. Okay, 32 bits. Long is of like 8 bytes, that is 64 bits. Again, we have float, which can store decimal values. Okay, here byte, short, int, long cannot store decimal values. You declare a particular variable with this data type, that particular variable cannot store decimal values. But if you declare that particular variable with either float or double, that particular variable can store decimal values. Okay, double is double the size of float, that you can understand for now. Char, a variable declared with char data type, primitive data type, can store single letter, character, or symbol, or whatever it is, surrounded by single quotes. Okay, single letter thing. Okay, single character it can store. Then boolean can store only 2 values, either true or false. Okay, variable declared with boolean can store either true or false. So these are the 8 primitive data types we have in Java. All these 8 primitive data types are non-object oriented in nature, and they are a very basic data types. Okay, basic data types or elementary level data types. Okay, that we have in Java programming, and the basic things will start with data types, and this will go into the complex level. Okay, using this basic, we can create complex structures, and they are more often used. That's why Java guys kept them as non-object oriented nature. If they have made them object oriented, the programs will consume more memory and space and all those stuff. Okay, performance will degrade and all those stuff. Okay, so Java guys still feel that by keeping them non-object oriented, the memory and space and performance of the programs will improve. That's why they're called as primitive data types, which are non-object oriented and basic level data types we have in Java. Okay, fine. And these are the different primitive data types we have in Java. With practical demonstration, I'm going to show you an example of each and every primitive data type we have here. For that, I'll just create a new class. I'll just name this class as class C with the main method. And inside the main method, I'm going to declare some variables. Okay. So int A is equal to 9. Int B is equal to some 121. Int C is equal to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Int D is equal to. So here I'm using everywhere int, right? Here I'll use byte. It can store integer value. Here I'm using short. It can store bigger size number. Okay, I don't want to explain all the detailed things. Okay, short int. Here I can say long 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, something. Okay, if I give some bigger number, I'm getting an error. I can put L here. Okay, long literal it can store, or integer values also it can store. Okay, fine. Integer to long literals it can store because it has bigger size of all these things. And coming to the float E is equal to 12.34. If I put a semicolon, I'll get an error because the values that need to be stored into the variable of the float data type need to be ending with F, capital F or lowercase f. Here, the value that you are storing should be an integer literal like this, or if it is a bigger size, you have to append L here so that it can store long literals also into this variable. Okay, integer literals are like this. Okay, long literals are like this, and floating point values and double F here 123.456. It can store. Here D is optional, guys. Whether you want to put lowercase d or capital D or without D, it's okay. Okay, it can store. But float compulsory F should be there. Lowercase or capital F should be there. Okay. Then we have char E is equal to some S, or in place of this S, you can provide a symbol or number or whatever. It doesn't matter. It should be surrounded by single quotes and only one item should be there. Boolean either true, or if not true, in place of true, there should be false. Okay. So these are the different primitive data types we have in Java: byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean. For each and every primitive data type, I have given example how we can use these different primitive data types for declaring the variables, and accordingly, how can we assign the compatible data into that particular variables declared with the different primitive data types. So with practical demonstration, I have answered this question for you. So what are primitive data types in Java? Primitive data types are non-object oriented and basic level and elementary level data types in Java, using which we can declare variables, and by declaring the variables, we can assign compatible data into that particular variables. Okay. In Java, it's mandatory to declare the variables with the primitive data types. Otherwise, it will not allow. If you try to directly say A is equal to 5, it won't be possible. Okay. In Java, for example, here I'll give a different thing. Different variable. You see, I have not declared the variable. I cannot be result a variable. The moment I declare the variable, only the compiler error or errors will go. Okay. It's mandatory to declare the variables with primitive data types in Java. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is string a primitive data type in Java? The answer is no. Then what is string? String is a predefined class in Java. It's not a primitive data type. It is a predefined class. Though the usage of the string in Java looks similar to how we use the primitive data types in Java, we should not get confused like string is also primitive data type. Okay, most of the people, okay, who learn Java think that string is also another primitive data type in Java. But in Java, we only have 8 primitive data types starting from byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean. These are the only 8 primitive data types we have in Java. And coming to string, though its usage looks similar to the primitive data types, but don't get confused that it is a primitive data type. Instead, it is a predefined class. Okay, a predefined class that Java developers have already developed for us and have given us as part of the Java library. Okay, string is a predefined class in Java. Okay, which is already developed by the Java developers, and they have given this predefined class for us as part of the Java library. But the usage of the string class looks similar to the primitive data type. So most of the people get confused here. Okay, but it's not a primitive data type. It's a predefined class in Java. Let me show you practically what I talk and what I explained so far. So for that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE and create a new class. I'll just name this class as class D with some main method, etc. Okay, some random class. Here, I'll show you how the usage of the primitive data types will be there in Java. Like for example, byte A is equal to 9. Okay, then short is another primitive. Byte is one primitive data type. The next primitive data type is byte. After byte is short, let's say. So 121. Then I'll go with the next primitive data type, that is int, where I can give a bigger number of integer value. Then we have long, more bigger value I can give, no, without any problem. Okay, these are 4 primitive data types so far I created before you. Now we have the next primitive data types like float, where we can assign some decimal values onto 0.34 f, okay, literal. Then double, f is equal to 123.456. Here also decimal value you can assign. And then we have char G, and single letters you can give either a character or a number or a symbol, doesn't matter. Then we have Boolean, either true or false you can assign to this variable. So here A to H are all variables, guys. Okay. Now I'm going to set string I is equal to string literal text. Okay. So here when you observe this primitive data types and when you compare this primitive data types with string, the usage looks similar to the primitive data types, right? Here, as if seems like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H are variables. They are declared with different primitive data types. And according to the declared primitive data types, we have assigned the values to them, okay? The compatible values to them. But string also looks like it is declaring some variable and we are assigning some string literal to this variable, but here I is not a variable anymore. Okay, it's not a variable case, okay? It's not like A, B, C, D, okay? If I say let's say if I say a dot, you see, you'll not get any suggestions here. But if I say I dot, I'm getting a lot of methods, predefined methods are coming because these predefined methods belong to the string class. Okay. So if I say a dot, I'm not getting anything. B dot, I'm not getting anything. C dot, I'm not getting anything. D dot, I'm not getting anything. E dot, I'm not getting anything. F dot, I'm not getting anything. G dot, I'm not getting anything. H dot, I'm not getting anything. But if I say I dot, I'll get a lot of predefined methods, okay, from the string class. So string is a predefined class in Java. It's not a primitive data type. One more thing I have to explain to make it clear for you that string is not a primitive data type, rather it is a predefined class, is that I can create an object for the string class. Can I create an object for the primitive data type? Like for example, byte A is equal to new byte of, can I do something like this? Can I create an object for the primitive data types? Say invalid class type. You cannot create an object for the primitive data types. Okay, primitive data types in Java are all non-object oriented. You cannot create objects for any of these primitive data types. But coming to the string, it's not a primitive data type. It's a predefined class. So I'll prove you that I can create an object for the string. So instead of writing like this, I can also write something like this: string I is equal to new string of. I can create an object for the string because string is a predefined class in Java. I can create an object for any class in Java, including string. String is a predefined class in Java, which is developed by the Java developers, and they have given us this particular string data type. String class as part of the Java library. Okay, here we have the JRE system library, and in that Java library, you see string predefined class belong to java.lang. So let's go to java.lang here, and it is part of java.base. In the java.base, we have java.lang. In the java.lang, we have a predefined class known as string. So we'll find somewhere string. String is a predefined class. It's not a primitive data type, guys. Okay. System is there. Where is string? String. This is string.class. It's a predefined class which is already developed by Java developers, and they have given us the string predefined class as part of this Java library. Okay. But a lot of people get confused because the shortcut representation of the string class. Okay, if you're actually using the string class and you want to assign some value to this object reference and all. Okay, so this is an object reference, guys. I is an object reference. It's not a variable. Okay, and I is referring to the memory location where this particular string text is stored. Okay, in the memory and all for that object. Okay, but here string, a lot of people think that it looks similar to the primitive data types and they may get confused, like string is a primitive data type, but they confuse, okay? But string in actual is a predefined class in Java for which you can create an object. For any of these primitive data types, you cannot create an object. For string, you can create an object. That proves that string is a, and also you can say I dot, you'll get all the predefined methods of the string class. That also proves that. But there is this actual representation of the string class, okay? But there is a shortcut representation, okay? If you have to do the same thing in a shortcut way, string class allows you to do something like this, okay? I don't know to read, it will allow you to do so, okay? This is a shortcut representation, okay, for the same thing. Instead of writing like this, you can also write like this, okay? So since Java allows you to use string in this way, a lot of people get confused, like string is also another primitive data type, okay? But a string is a predefined class in Java. It's not a primitive data type. We only have 8 primitive data types in Java. That is byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean are the 8 primitive data types we have in Java, and string is a predefined class, okay? So hope guys you got the answer for this question with practical demonstration in this session. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is the scope of variables in Java? Let me answer. First of all, there are two types of variables we have in Java. That is local variables, and the other one are global variables. Local variables are the variables in Java which are created inside the methods, and their scope is up to that particular method in which they are created only. You cannot access these local variables outside the methods, okay? And coming to the global variables are the variables in Java which are directly created under the class and outside the methods. Hence, you can access this global variables throughout the class in which they are created. The scope of these global variables is throughout the class, but scope of local variables is up to the method in which they are created. In whatever the method you create these local variables, to that method only, in that method only, you can access these local variables. That's the scope of local variables. Whereas coming to the global variables, they are directly created under the class and outside the methods. Hence, they can be accessed from the beginning of the class to the ending of the class. Okay. So with practical demonstration, I'm going to answer this question for you. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE where I'll create a new class for you. Right click here and just create a new class. I'll just give some random name, say class E, and click on finish. Okay. So now if I create a method like public void sample1 method, let's say, okay, I created a method. Inside this method, if I'm creating a variable int a is equal to 5, then this particular method is a local variable. Why? Because this variable is created inside a method, right? Inside the method, if you are creating a variable, that variable, this variable with the name a becomes a local variable, and it can be accessed only within the method. Outside the method, you cannot access it, okay? If I say system.out.println a means it can be accessible because this statement is inside this method only, so it can be accessible, okay? So what if I try to create one more method, public void sample2, and try to access this variable in this particular method, though this particular variable is a local variable created inside this method, can I access this variable outside the method in another method? The answer is no. If I try to access this, I'm going to get a compiler error saying a cannot be resolved to a variable. Why? Because this is a local variable. The scope of this local variable is up to the method in which it is created. In the only inside the method you can access it. Okay. Outside the method you cannot access it. Okay. So outside this particular method, the variable a cannot be accessed. So what if this is not possible in Java? Okay. So what if I create a global variable directly under the class and outside the methods, outside any of these methods of this class, directly under the class, if I am creating a variable like this variable, which is directly created under the class, directly under the class and outside the methods, is called as a global variable. Okay. Global variable. And this global variable can be accessed throughout this class. Okay. If you want to access in this method, you can access without any problem. You see, I'll be able to use it. Okay. I'm with not getting any Java compiler error here. Okay. If I try to access in another method, I can access it because all these methods are inside the class. So hence, this particular global variable, which is directly created under the class and outside the methods, can be accessed throughout the class. Okay. So you got the scope of this global variable, right? The class in which you have created, you can access it. Okay. That's the scope of the global variable. The scope of the local variable is only up to the method in which it is created. Okay. Inside which it is created. So hope guys you got the answer for this question with practical demonstration. That is what is the scope of the variables in Java. There are two types of variables, local variables, global variables. Local variables are created inside the methods and the scope is only in the methods in which they are created. Okay, you can access only in the methods in which they are created. Whereas global variables are directly created under the class and outside the methods, and hence they can be accessed throughout the class. Okay, so that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, explain the concept of variable shadowing in Java. Let me answer. In Java programs, we can create local variables and global variables. Okay, local variables are the variables. Let's say this is the Java program. In the Java program, we can create the local variables. Okay, and the global variables. Local variables are the variables which are created in the inner scope of the program. Okay, in the inner scope of the program, let's say this is a method. Okay, the method starting point, method ending point. Inside this method, if you are creating a variable, that we generally call it as a local variable. It is a local variable. Okay, now if you create a variable here outside the methods directly under the class, this is a Java class, and directly under the class, if you are creating variables, it becomes a global variable. This is a global variable. This is a local variable. The variable that is directly created in the outer scope of the program, that is outside the methods directly under the class, okay, in the outer scope of the program, that is called as global variable. The variable that is created in the inner scope of the program is called as local variable. What if this local variable has the same name as the global variable? Okay, there may be some situations where the local variable will have the same name and global variable will have the same name. In such kind of cases, the local variable is said to shadow the global variables, and this concept is called as variable shadowing. Okay, when a local variable has the same name as a global variable, then the local variable which is there in the inner scope of the program is said to shadow the global variable which is there in the outer scope of the program. This is the outer scope of the program, this inner scope of the program. Okay, a variable created inside the method is a local variable, and a variable that is directly created under the class outside the methods is called as a global variable. When the local variable which has the same name as the global variable that is created in the outer scope, and the local variable is created in the inner scope, this local variable which is created in the inner scope is said to shadow the global variable which is there in the outer scope. Okay, so what happens when the local variable which is created in the inner scope is shadowing the global variable that is created in the outer scope? The preference will be given to the local variable over the global variable. Okay, and there may be multiple methods. Let's say there may be multiple inner scopes here where another method may be there. In that method, if a local variable having the same name is not there, means global variable will be given preference. But if a particular method inner scope of a method or local variable has the same name as a global variable, then global variable will not be given the preference. Here local variable will be considered inside this method. In another method, this local variable having the same name may not be there, where global variable will be considered. Okay, this concept of a local variable shadowing the global variable when they have the same name is called as variable shadowing. Hope you got the concept now. Okay, so let me practically demonstrate this one. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse ID and create a new class here. So I'll just name this class as class F. Okay, create a main method. Okay, you can create normal method also. Let's create a main method for now. Okay, just to demonstrate. So here I'm going to create a local variable int a is equal to 10. System.out.println. Okay, system.out.println. I'm going to print the value of a. So when I run this code, what will happen? The value of 10 will be printed in the output, right? The value of 10, the value of variable a, that is 10, will get printed in the output console. That got printed here, as you can see here, right? 10 got printed. Now, so here, this is a local variable which is created in the inner scope, that is inside a method. Now, I'm going to create a global variable that is in this Java program, in the outer scope of this program, that is directly under the class outside the methods. I'm going to create a global variable. This time, the global variable and local variable are going to have the same name. Okay. Now here I'll say 5. In this case, do you think the value 5 will be printed in this when I print this variable a? 5 will be printed or 10 will be printed? What will be printed? Does this consider the global variable having the value 5, which is created in the outer scope of the program, or does it consider the value of this variable, which is there in the inner scope of the program, that is in local variable value? Which will be considered? Here, local variable value, local variable is going to shadow the global variable. Okay, shadow means It's going to object it, okay? It's not going to allow. The local variable also already has the same variable name, right? This method already has the same variable name. Then why it will allow the outsider kind of stuff, okay? So it will consider the inside one. And the preference will be given to the local variable over the global variable. So even though global variable has 5 and the local variable has 10, 10 will be printed again because this variable is shadowing this variable. So this variable will be considered for this particular method, okay? This concept is called as variable shadowing. You see 10 got considered instead of 5. What if this variable is not created inside the method? In that case, if there is no method, okay, if I have to make it global, it should be static case because static methods can only access static stuff. I have to make it static. So in this case, you see, I can access. So what happens in this case? Since local variable is not there, there is no variable to shadow this particular global variable. So in that case, global variable will be considered here and 5 will be printed in the output. Okay. What if the local variable in the inner scope, the same variable is created means in this case, what will happen? 10 will be considered here. Okay. This local variable will be given preference. Okay. This variable having the same name as a global variable. So local variable is going to shadow the global variable. Hence 10 got printed. Okay. So with practical demonstration, I have answered this question for you. That is explain the concept of variable shadowing in Java. When a local variable has the same name as a global variable, then the local variable in inner scope is said to shadow the global variable in the outer scope in terms of preference. Okay. So in inner scope variable, that is local variable will be considered in that case. Okay. As part of variable shadowing. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is the default value of a variable which is declared with int data type in Java? Let me answer. When you declare a variable at the global level in the Java programs, and if you don't initialize that particular variable which is declared with int data type at the global level, then, and if you try to print that variable inside the methods, etc., then you are going to get 0 printed, which is the default value. If you don't initialize the variables at the global level, which are declared with int data type, then by default, they will take the value as 0 days. Okay, let me show you practically how 0 will come into picture. For that, I'll switch to Eclipse IDE. Here, I'm going to create a new class. I'll just name this class as class G with main method. Okay, I'm going to create a global variable, static int A. Okay, I have not initialized this variable with any value. Now, inside this method, I'm going to print the variable A for which the value is not initialized. What will happen when I run this code? You see here, no compiler error is coming. Why? Because this is a global variable, but it is not initialized, but I'm trying to print it. When there is no value initialized to this particular variable, I'm trying to print that variable. So if nothing is stored in this variable, what is the default value? Okay, what is the default value that will be considered? Since Java is not giving you any compiler error. So when you run the code, 0 will be printed in the output, guys. Okay, you will get 0 in the output. Okay, 0 got printed in the output. Why? Because you don't initialize a global variable and try to print that variable inside the methods and all. Java will consider 0 for int declared variables. Okay, the answer is 0, guys. Okay, what is the default value of a variable declared with int data type in Java? If it is not initialized, 0. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this. What if you can ask me the same thing, right? What if I create a local variable? Okay, if it's not a global variable, if I create a local variable, if I don't initialize it, then what happens? Java will not accept that. This default value for the variables are considered only at the global level, but not at the local level. You try to create a variable inside the method, and if you don't initialize, and if you try to print that variable for which try to print the local variable for which value is not initialized, then Java compiler will give you error. The local variable may not have been initialized. But for global variables, no such kind of compiler error will come. Here it's compulsory to initialize the variable. Okay. You cannot print a variable without initializing it if that particular variable is a local variable. But if it is a global variable, it's not compulsory for you to initialize the variable, and the default value will be printed if you try to print that variable. Okay, that is global variable. Okay, so 0 will be printed in case of global variable if it is a variable is declared within data type. So hope guys you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is the default value of a variable that is declared with double data type in Java? Let me answer. In Java programs, when you create a global variable which is declared with double data type, and if you don't initialize such double data type declared global variable, in that case, if you try to print that variable, it will print the default value, that is 0.0. Okay, what is the default value? 0.0 is the answer case. Okay, so let me practically demonstrate this one. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE and create a new class. I'll just name this class as H, class H, some random name with main method. Now I need to create a global variable without initializing it, and I have to declare that global variable as double data type. Okay, double, here I'll say static double data type variable, variable A. I'm not initializing any value to this variable. Okay, now without initializing this global variable which is declared with double data type, if I try to print the value of the variable, the default value of this variable, even though this variable is not initialized, okay, the default value will be there. That default value of this particular global variable, which is declared with double data type, will be printed in the output. That is nothing but 0.0, guys. Okay, run this program, and you'll get 0.0 printed in the output console. Okay, the default value of a global variable declared with double data type in Java is 0.0. So why I'm saying global variable, can't we create a local variable? No, guys. Okay, in Java, if you create a local variable, same double A, and if you don't initialize the variable A, which is a local variable, which is declared with double, in that case, Java will give you the compiler error. In case of global error, in case of global variable, Java is not giving me any compiler error, right? But in case of local variable, compulsory local variables in Java need to be initialized. Java will not allow you to print the variables without initializing the local variables. Okay. If they are global variables, Java will allow you to print them without initializing. The default values will be considered. You see, if I remove this local variable, the global variable don't have to be initialized, but local variables compulsory need to be initialized. Okay. So here no need to initialize, default value will be taken into consideration as 0.0. Okay, simple. So hope guys, with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. That is, what is the default value of a variable declared with double data type at a global level in Java programs? The answer is 0.0 for double declared variables. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is the default value of a variable that is declared with Boolean data type in Java? Let me answer. In Java programs, when you create a global variable and declare that with Boolean data type, and if you don't initialize that variable, then what will be the default value of that particular variable? That means you are going to print the variable whose value is not initialized and it's declared with Boolean data type at a global level. In that case, what is the default value that will be printed in the output? That is false. Okay, false will be there. Only two possibilities for the Boolean variable, right? Either true should be there, false should be there. False will be considered as the default value if you don't initialize the global Boolean variable. Okay, so let me practically demonstrate that one for you. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE. I'm going to create a new class. I'll just name this class as class I, some random name, main method. Here I'm going to create a global variable. So here I'll simply say static Boolean A. I'm not going to initialize this variable, guys. Okay. And I made this static because I need to access this variable inside this method, which is a static method. Since static methods can only access static stuff, I made this static. Okay. So that I can easily access this variable inside this method. Okay. Now this variable is declared at a global level with Boolean data type, but it is not initialized with any value. In that case, if you try to print out the variable, Java will not give you any compiler error. Even though you don't initialize the global variable, Java is not going to give you a compiler error. Java will simply consider a default value for this particular Boolean variable. Either true or false should be there. No? Java will consider false as a value by default. Okay. Run this code. False will be printed in the output when you print the variable A. Okay. False got printed in the output. So you may ask me, what if I create this variable without initializing at a local variable? If I comment this out and if I try to create the same variable Boolean A at the local level without initializing, Java will not allow you to, okay? Java will not allow you in this case. Without initializing, you cannot use a variable. Without initializing a local variable, you cannot use a variable in Java. So the variable should be declared at a global level. If you don't want to initialize and still want to use it with some default value, it should be there at the global level. But if you try to use it from the local level, though local level variables need to be initialized in order to use. So without that, Java compiler error will come saying local variable is not initialized. For global variables, it's not compulsory to initialize. They will come up with a default value. Okay. So, but local variables, it's not possible, guys. So we have to go with the global variables. Whenever someone asks you this question, I have to explain this. Okay. So when global variables declared with a Boolean data type, if they are not initialized, the default value will be false. You have to explain. Okay. So hope guys you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is the default value of a variable that is declared with string class in Java? Let me answer. In Java programs, when you declare a variable at a global level with the string class without assigning any value to it, and if you directly try to print that variable inside the methods, then it will print null because that variable which is declared with string class at a global level is not assigned with any object, etc. So it doesn't hold any object. Okay. So it will print null in the output. So let me practically demonstrate this for you. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE. I'm going to create a new class. I'll just name this class as class J, some random name with main method and also one. Okay. And here at a global level, I'll write down static string A. I'm not, assigning any value to this variable which is declared with string class at a global level. And if I directly try to print the variable, I'll not get any compiler error because it is a global variable. It's not compulsory to initialize or assign some value to this global variable. Even though it's declared with string class type, no object is assigned and nothing like that. Okay. So what will happen? Not only string class, guys, any class in Java, if you don't assign anything to that particular thing, then the object reference will print null as an output. Okay. In the output, you will get null. Okay. If there is some object associated, the object will be printed. But you see, for example, if I say string new of Arun Motori, just see what will happen. Okay. So in this case, the object is assigned. You see, I created an object and assigned to this variable. So in this case, the value will be printed. Okay. My name will be printed. Okay. But if I don't assign any object to this variable declared with the string class at a global level, Java will not give you compiler error since no object is assigned to this object reference. It will give you null as an output. Okay. Not only this class, any class you take, the same thing, guys. Okay. Any class you take, it will be the same thing, guys. Okay. It will print null as an output. So what if I make this thing a local thing? Okay. For example, if I say string A, is it possible? No, guys. For local variables, different rules. It's compulsory to assign some object to this variable, which is declared with string class. If it is a local variable, if it's a global variable, there is an exemption where it's not compulsory to assign or initialize. Okay. Any value or object to this thing. Directly you can print it out and the default value null will be there and null will be printed in the output. But here in this case, it is compulsory to initialize this local. Okay. Local variable declared with string class. It need to be initialized. Okay. So that's what is the thing, guys. So only possible at the global level. Okay. The value will be null. The answer is null, guys. Okay. What is the default value of a variable declared with string class at a global level in Java programs? If you don't assign anything, it will print null. Not only this string class, any other class in Java will print null in such cases. Okay. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we declare variables with different data types in a single line in Java programming? The answer is no. In Java programming, if you want to declare multiple variables with different data types in a single line, it is not possible. If they are of the same data type, if you want to declare, then it is possible. But multiple variables with the different data types in a single line, not possible. Okay. So the answer is no for Java programming. But if you go for other programming languages like Python or JavaScript, it is possible to create multiple variables with the different data types in a single line we can create, okay, or declare. So let me practically demonstrate how that is not possible in Java. Okay, further I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE. I'll create a new class to demonstrate this. So here some error is coming. So I'll just comment out this bit. I'll just create a new class. Class L or something, some random name. Main method with main method I'm creating so that I can directly write the code here. So inside this method, I'm going to create or declare multiple variables. If I try to do so with different data types, okay? For example, first variable int, second variable double, third variable char, fourth variable boolean, first variable A, B, C, D. Like this, if I want to declare, is it possible? Is it possible to declare multiple variables with the different data types in a single line in Java? It's not possible, guys, okay? If the same data type, if I replace all this with in data type, it's possible. You see, I'm not getting any compiler error here. Earlier I was getting, right? If I want to declare this multiple variables in a single line with different data types, in Java it's not possible. In other programming languages like Python or JavaScript, it is possible, but in Java, it is not possible. Okay, if you want to declare multiple variables with different data types, definitely you have to go with different lines. Okay, so int A, double B, char C, boolean D, have to create them or declare them in separate lines. But in a single line, if I want to create multiple variables with different data types, it is not possible. With same data type, it is possible in a single line to create multiple variables in Java. But different data types, multiple variables in a single line, not at all possible in Java. So hope guys, you got an answer for this question with practical demonstration in this session. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what are the different primitive data types we have in Java? The answer is, there are 8 primitive data types we have in Java. Primitive means non-object oriented basic, data types. Okay, primitive means non-object oriented. They're not associated. Only these primitive data types are non-object oriented in Java, because of which Java is not 100% object oriented programming language. The remaining portion of Java, except this primitive data types, is object oriented, but primitive data types are non-object oriented. Primitive means non-object oriented basic data types. Okay, basic level data types. We have 8 primitive data types. What are they? Let me write down them for you. What are the different primitive data types? Total 8, count is 8. So they are nothing but, it starts with byte, guys. Okay, byte is the first data type. Then we have short, then we have int, then we have long, then we have float, and then we have double, then we have char, and then we have boolean. So these are the total 8 primitive data types. So why I have separated them? I gave a space here, I gave a space here, I gave a space here. Why? Because all these 4 data types will store numbers, non-decimal numbers, okay? Normal numbers, integer value kind of numbers, okay? They will store. Whereas coming to float and double, if a variable which is declared with float or double data type, that particular variable, we can store decimal values, okay? If you want to store normal numeric non-decimal type of values, integer values into the variables, then we have to declare the variables with this first 4 data types. Or if you want to store decimal values into that variables, then you have to declare that variables with these data types. If you want to store single letter character surrounded by single quotes into that variable, then you have to declare that with char data type. That single letter character can be a character, number, or a symbol. And finally, we have a last primitive data type, that is Boolean, where if you declare a variable with the Boolean data type, you can only store 2 type of values, either true or false. Those are the Boolean values, okay? So these are the 8 primitive data types we have in Java. All these primitive data types are non-object oriented. Why they are non-object oriented? Why Java developers have decided these primitive data types to be non-object oriented? The reason is these are used for many things in Java programming. Okay, to store data, we need these primitive data types. For storing data also, if you use object oriented, Java developers felt that in the long back, they have felt that, okay, that will consume a lot of memory. Okay, and because of it, the performance, memory allocation, everything will get affected. Okay, So they made it a lightweight and less memory utilization concept. And now we have very good systems available, but still, guys, okay, Java developers still felt that why to waste the memory when there is an opportunity of saving it, okay? So they still kept it as non-object oriented type, okay? Though other programming languages, even this this kind of concept is everything is object oriented there, 100% object oriented. But Java is not 100% object oriented till now also. The reason behind that is this primitive data types, which are basic non-object oriented data types in Java. Okay. For basic operations, we use this for storing the data and all. Okay. So fine. Anyhow, I'm going to create a class to demonstrate this different 8 primitive data types we have in Java. So I'll just name this class some random name and with main method. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to declare variables with different data types. Byte A is equal to 9, short B is equal to 121, then int C is equal to a big number I will give, for example, long B is equal to, okay, then I'll give float E is equal to, okay, then double F is equal to some different numbers I'm giving. Just an example, guys, okay? I'm demonstrating different data types for you, that's it, okay? Char G, I can put a symbol or a character or number, anything in place of that, in between that single quotes. Then finally Boolean H, either true or false I can assign, okay? So this is an example of different primitive data types we have in Java. There are totally 8 are there: byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, Boolean. So hope guys with practical demonstration, you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. All, welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we use local variables without initializing them? The answer is no. In Java, we cannot use local variables without initializing them, without initializing or assigning some initial value to the local variables in Java programming. We cannot use or print or do whatever with the variables. Java will give you a compiler error, okay? Asking you to initialize it first. If it is a local variable, a compiler error will come if you have not assigned any value to the variable. And if you start using it without assigning an initial value or initializing it, Java is going to give you a compiler error saying that local variables need to be initialized. Such kind, similar kind of, okay, initialized kind of compiler error will come. But if you talk about the global variables, there is no problem in Java. So local variables are the variables which you create inside the method, okay, which you declare and create inside the method. For such kind of local variables, it's mandatory in Java to initialize them before using, okay. If you are not using, not a problem. But if you are trying to print the variable or use the variable in any operations without initializing, you cannot use, okay. That's what is the logic, okay. But coming to the global variables, the variables that you declare directly under the class and outside the methods, it's possible without initializing, without assigning the initial value to the variable. Still, you can use that variable in the programming without getting any compiler error. For global variables, there is no restriction in Java, but for local variables, the variables which are created inside the methods or in the inner scope of the programming, if you try to create variables and if you try to use them without initializing, then there is a problem of compiler error saying local variables need to be initialized, okay? So with practical demonstration, I'm going to answer that for you. So for that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE. I'm going to create a new class. And here, I'll just say class and some random class like class n I'll take, and with main method I'll create, and here I'm going to, okay, inside this main method, I'm going to create a variable. So inside a method, if you are creating or declaring a variable, and if you are not assigning a value like this, okay, you're not initializing or assigning a value, either in this line or this line, you are not assigning a initial value to this variable and directly trying to use that variable. Okay, one example of using a variable is printing it, okay, printing that variable. Immediately Java will give you a compiler error saying local variable may not have been initialized. You have to initialize. Without initializing, you cannot use the variable in Java programming. These local variables need to be initialized. Variables that are created inside the methods It's compulsory in Java to initialize in order to use them. Otherwise, you cannot use them. For example, I'll remove this from here. I'll just comment out this one. And if I create the same variable outside the methods directly under the class, okay, I'll just make it static because static methods can only access static stuff. I'll make it static. So fine. Here, I have declared this variable at a global level, at the class level outside the methods. So this becomes a global variable. And if I try to use the global variable without actually initializing or assigning an initial value to the variable, no problem, guys. Java will take some default value automatically for the global variables. It's not compulsory to initialize. If you initialize, it will take that value. If you don't initialize the global variables, the default value will be assigned like 0 to this. For example, int data type 0 will be there. For a double 0.0 will be there. Okay, like different data type, different default values will be there for global variables. But for local variables, here the question is all about local variables. Okay, without initializing the local variables or assigning some value to the local variables, you cannot use them. Okay, so initialize variable kind of error will come. Okay, so that's the thing, guys. That's the thing. Okay. If you just declare and don't use them, no problem. But if you want to use them, you have to initialize and use the local variables. Okay. So hope guys with practical demonstration, you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we use global variables without initializing them in Java? The answer is yes. In Java programs, we can use global variables without initializing them. That means you don't have to assign any value to the global variables in order to use them in the Java programs. It's not compulsory. If you don't even initialize also, we can still use these global variables in our Java programs. Why? Because Java by default will consider some default values for this particular global variables, which are declared with different data types. According to the declared data types, some default value will be considered, even though you don't initialize these global variables in Java programs. And even though you start using them without initializing them. So for example, if you have declared this global variable as int data type, and you have not initialized the value, any value to that particular variable, and if you start using that particular variable in the programs, then Java will consider a default value like 0 for that variable because that is of int data type. For the next data type, let's say double data type, okay? Java will consider 0.0 as a default value if you don't initialize that variable declared with that particular data type global variable. Okay, then if you have declared that global variable as a Boolean data type and you have not initialized any value, Java will consider Boolean value false by default. Okay, if you have not even assigned also, it will consider false. Okay, like that every data type, for example, every data type in double, okay, this Boolean, etc., some default value will be considered by Java automatically, even though you don't initialize and start using that kind of variables, global variables in the programs. So let me practically demonstrate this one. Further, I'll switch to the Eclipse IDE and create a new class. I'll right click, new class. I'll just randomly name this class as class O with main method or any method, that's okay. Now, here I'm going to create a global variable. Let's say static int A. I'm not going to assign any value to this variable. Okay. Similarly, I'll give static equal B. This is lowercase. Then I'll give static in double. Then we have other one like Boolean. Let's say Boolean C. So 3 global variables I created, guys. For none of these variables have assigned any value, initial value, or I have initialized these variables. But if I start directly using them in the programs, let's say I want to print the value of this variable A, even though I have not assigned any value to the variable A, still I am trying to print the value that is stored in the variable A. So what happens? Since I have not initialized these variables, you may think that Java compiler may give you an error here to initialize these variables with some values so that the values will get printed in the output using this print statements. But that's not going to happen. Why? Because for global variables, it's not compulsory to initialize them. It's not compulsory to assign some values. If you don't assign, some default value will be considered by Java for each and every of these variables. For example, for A, which is of int data type, 0 default value will be considered. For B of double data type, 0.0 as the default value will be considered even though you don't have assign or initialize. For C, false, default value false, Boolean value false will be considered. Okay, if I run this program, 0, 0.0 and false will be printed in the output. 0, 0.0 false got printed in the output console. So this is applicable only for the global variables, guys. The global variables are the variables in Java which are directly created under the class and outside the methods. Outside the methods, we have created these variables. So these are called as global variables. What if the same variables are there inside the method? That is, if you try this with local variables, is it possible in Java to use the local variables if you have not initialized them? It's not possible, guys. Okay, if you say int a, double b, then boolean c, this is not going to work in this way. Okay, for global variables only, this kind of option is there, but in Java, for local variables, the variables which are created inside the methods are inside the method or methods are called as local variables. For all the local variables, in order to use them, first we have to initialize them and then we have to use them in the program. Otherwise, we are going to get a compiler error saying local variable may not have been initialized. That means you have to initialize them with some value. But for global variables, it's not compulsory. Okay. So hope guys you got an idea how you can use global variables without initializing. So the answer is yes for this question. Can we use global variables without initializing them? Yes. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what are the other names for primitive data types in Java? Let me answer. In Java, we can also call these primitive data types with other names. Most of the times we call them as primitive data types only, which is most used one. But there are other names using which we can call these data types. Instead of primitive data types, we can use other names also, but they are not that much used as primitive data types. But let's find out what are the other names we have for these primitive data types in Java. Okay. First of all, there are 8 primitive data types. That is basic data types we have in Java. That is byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean. These are the 8 primitive data types which are non-object oriented in nature, and they get operated directly by the underlying machine, okay, or the syntax of the Java. Okay, so direct underlying machine in where the Java program is running, so data types will directly interact. So that's why they are very simple, basic, efficient, effective, and whatever you say. Okay, so they are non-object oriented in nature also. But what are the names we have for these primitive data types? What are the other names we can call them as? So first one, primitive data types, I already told you, is most used one in the industry. Wherever you go, people refer to this byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, boolean as primitive data types, first of all. And there are very less number of section of people who call these primitive data types with other names like elementary data types. Elementary means why the name is given elementary. You have had some word like elementary school. What is elementary school means where basics foundations will be taught, right? Since these data types are also related to some basics and foundation level kind of data types, right? Basic nature they have, right? So that's the reason, simple basic nature they have. That's the reason to emphasize this basic nature. People call it as elementary data types. It's often called, but not that much as primitive data types. And the other one is basic data types. They are basic level only, right? Okay. Using these basic data types, we can create, okay? By using these basic data types, we can go till complex algorithms, data structures, and all we can create, okay? But the basic ones are these primitive data types. By programming this primitive data type, we can go to the complex level stuff, okay? Commonly used to convey the idea of foundation level. Foundation, okay? Without foundation, you cannot build a building, right? So if you want to create some algorithms, very big programs, complex structures and all, right? First, we need some foundation, right? This primitive data types acts like a foundation for storing the data into the variables. Okay. Then last name given, or we can call this primitive data types is scalar types. Okay. So why we call this primitive data types as scalar types? Because whatever the variables you declare this primitive data types with, they will store only individual values. Okay. Like not composite values, a combination of values doesn't get stored. Either integer value will be stored or decimal value will be stored, but decimal plus integer won't be stored. Or in some other languages, we have different type of composite nature of values can be stored, like combination of alphabet plus number. That is not possible. Okay. Scalar types, why we call? Because very less used. People use it. You call this primitive data types as scalar types very less. Okay, very less. Very few times they may call. Very rarely. I have not heard any time from the people, but it's there. Okay, maybe very less section of people may use it to represent that, to say that these primitive data types only represent individual values, okay? Individual independent values rather than combination of alphabets, numbers and all. Either integer values will be there, or decimal numbers will be there, or Boolean value will be there, or character literal will be there, string literal will be, whatever it is, but combination won't be there, okay? That's why they are called as scalar types also. So these are the four names that people call this primitive data types, other names with when they call these primitive data types with other names: primitive data types, elementary data types, basic data types, scale. These are the four types only. Okay, the names, four types of names they call these primitive data types. Okay, so practical demonstration. There's nothing to show like as per an answer, but I'll demonstrate this different primitive data types that you can also call them as elementary data types, basic and scalar types in a practical way. For that, I'll create a new class, and in that class, I'll just give some random name. In that class, I'll create a main method. Inside that main method, I'll create some variables and declare them with different data types. Okay, different primitive data types. Byte A is equal to 9. Okay, short B is equal to 121. Then int C is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then long D is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then float E is equal to 1.23 F, and double F is equal to 12.34. Then char G is equal to some S or symbol or row number, whatever you want to give inside single quotes. Boolean H is equal to, Boolean H is equal to something like true. Okay. So these are the different primitive data types. Total we have 8. This can be either called as primitive data types, or you can also call them as elementary data types, or basic data types, or scalar data types, whatever you want. So with practical demonstration, I have answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, what is a shortcut in Eclipse IDE for importing predefined classes and interfaces? Let me answer. In Eclipse IDE, if you want to import the predefined classes and interfaces used in some programs like Java programs, etc., we have to use a shortcut known as Control-Shift-O. If you don't use this shortcut, there are two other ways, guys. Okay. The first way is that you manually write the import statement by yourself. Okay. Top of the class, Java program, in the top of the class, you can write import space, the package name, parent package name, dot child package name, its child package name, dot class, whatever the class you want to import, that class name. Okay, like that you can write the import statement manually by yourself. That is one way. If you remember the import statement, you can write it by yourself. Most of the cases, we don't remember the things. Okay, so the first case is very rare. Second case is where Eclipse IDE is kind of very intelligent, where it has an intelligence kind of option where if you move your mouse onto that class which need to be imported, having some error being shown, when you hover the mouse on that, as a suggestion, in the IntelliSense suggestion, you will get a direct option to select the import statement. Just by selecting that option, automatically Eclipse IDE will write the import statement for you. That's the second way. And there's another way which can save a lot of time for you. Okay, instead of going and writing manually or hovering your mouse onto the class and then importing. Instead of that, if you have a shortcut, when you press that shortcut, whatever the predefined classes and interfaces in that particular Java program or whatever the Selenium programs or Java programs, any other programs in that Eclipse IDE editor need to be imported automatically without the need for you to select any options and all. Just press Control-Shift-O. Things will be done, guys. Okay, let me show you practically so that you will understand the answer for this question. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE and create a new class. I'll just name this class as class Q. With main method, I'll create. Okay, so once I create that class, and now I'm going to write something like, for example, file input stream FIS is equal to new file input stream, and in this I'll say new file of, okay, put a semicolon and provide double quotes here. All good. but you can see something that some errors are coming. If you hover the mouse on this file, it is asking you to import this file. Okay, this is one way. Or you remember how to import this file class from Java, java.io package. You can write manually here, import java.io.file. Like that, you can write it manually if you remember. Okay, you see the error is gone. Similarly, if you want to import the file input stream, there are two file input stream. There are two ways. That is, hover the mouse on this file input stream and select import statement here. Eclipse IDE will automatically add this for you. Or you remember how to write this java.io.file input stream, like you type and put semicolon. But if you don't want to write them, or neither you want to hover your mouse and select this option, is there any shortcut in Eclipse IDE to do this automatically, where this file class will be imported from that particular package of Java, and file input stream class will be automatically imported from the particular class, library of Java and all? Control Shift O. Just press three keys together, Control, Shift, and O key on your keyboard. Okay, you have to press Control, Shift, and O keys together. You see, automatically they got added. It will save a lot of time for us, guys. Okay, it will save a lot of time for us. Okay, you see, file input stream got imported and everything got imported. Okay, there's another error where you can ignore the error. That's okay. That's a different stuff. Okay, but you have imported the file input stream and file. Okay, that is the case, guys. Okay, so just press Control key plus Shift key plus O key together, not separately together. Then you will get that import statements added automatically within less time. Without wasting time, you can proceed further. So hope guys you got the answer for this question with practical demonstration in this session. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can you create a final variable without initializing it? The answer is no. In Java, when you create a variable and specify that variable with final modifier, it is mandatory to initialize that particular variable. There are two ways to initialize such kind of variable specified with final modifier. Either you can initialize that variable, that is assign the initial value to that particular variable in the same line where it is declared and specified with final modifier, or there's another way where you can create a constructor, okay, and you can initialize that particular final variable with a value inside the constructor. Okay, so there are two ways, guys. Okay, either of the ways you have to choose to initialize the final variable in Java, but without initializing, it is not possible, guys. If you don't initialize the variable either in the same line or in the constructor, Java will immediately give you a compiler error. Okay, so it is not possible to create a final variable without initializing it in Java. Okay, let me practically demonstrate this one. For that, I'll switch to Eclipse IDE and I'm going to create a new class and just name this class as class R. With main method I'll create. Okay, so it can be any method, that's okay, some method. And now here I'm going to create a variable, let's say int a. Okay, I'm not getting any error. You see, when I'm declaring this variable with some data type like int, I'm not getting any error. Once I provide final modifier, once I specify the final modifier before this variable, I'm getting an error. The blank field may not have been initialized. Java is saying that Java is already giving me a compiler error saying that you have to initialize this variable. How to initialize? Either in the same line. I have to assign some initial value to this variable in the same line. You see, error is gone. Or if you don't want to initialize in the same line, there's another way where you can create a constructor. Okay, the constructor, when you create, will not have any return type, and the name of the constructor should match with the name of the class. Okay, either in the same line you initialize, or you see the moment you create a constructor, you see the error with this final int a statement is gone. Okay, now Java understands that you may initialize this particular variable in the constructor, so that's the reason it's giving compiler error at a different place saying the blank field a may not have been initialized. Try to initialize that in the constructor. Okay, if you want to initialize this value of this final value variable a here, that's okay, it's saying. Okay, but if you don't create a constructor, here itself you'll get the error. If you create a normal method, let's say public void sample method, let's say, the error will not be gone from here. You see, it's not Java is not saying that to initialize this variable in this particular method. But if it is a constructor, then it will take this error from this place to the constructor, because it believes that maybe if you are in a plan of initializing this particular variable in the constructor rather than initializing in the same line. Okay, so in method we cannot initialize the final variable, but in the same line where the final variable is created, you can initialize, or you can initialize the value to that particular variable in the constructor. You see, I have initialized the value to this particular variable in the constructor. Java is fine with that. Okay, either I have to initialize here or I have to initialize here. Okay, what if I do something like this? You see, this is a final value. You cannot update. Okay, once you initialize, it's not allowed to again modify the value of this particular variable in the constructor. That's not allowed, guys. Okay, only one place you have to initialize. Either you want to initialize in the first line, the same line where the final variable is created, or you want to initialize that in the constructor. That is up to you, guys. Okay, only those two ways you have to choose. Okay, so hope guys with practical demonstration you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we specify method parameters with final modifier in Java? The answer is yes. We can specify the final modifier for the method parameters. Okay, no matter how many parameters are specified in that particular method, before every parameter, you can specify this final modifier or keyword without any problem. Java will not give you any compiler error. It is possible. The answer is yes. But what happens when you specify this parameters of a particular method with this final modifier? You see, you can only pass the values while calling the method. You can only pass the values to that particular parameters, which are specified as final. Okay, and the values of that particular parameters cannot be updated anymore. Only you can pass the values to the method parameters, and once passed, that's it. You cannot change the values. Okay, in the program or in the method, if you try to change the values of that particular parameters, Java is going to give you the compiler error. Okay, so let me practically demonstrate what I have answered just now in a theoretical manner. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE and create a new class. So I'll name this class as class yes. Okay, and fine. I'll click on finish. And now inside this class, I'm going to create a method, public void. Let's say add sample. Okay, some different random name I'm giving. Okay, for the class and method. That's okay. And here I'm creating two parameters, int a comma int b. So here I'll say int sum is equal to a plus b. And whenever this particular method is called and all, I would like to print the sum of these two values that got passed to this particular method while calling it. Okay. Now how to call this particular method? So far I have not assigned or specified any final modifier before any of these parameters of this method. So without specifying the final modifier, what happens in the method, I'm going to teach you first. After that, I'll go with the final modifier anyhow. So if I have to call this particular method, either I have to create a new class, and in that class main method, and in that main method, I have to create an object for this class, or inside the same class also I can create a main method, public static void main string. As you know, in Java, execution starts from the main method. So I have to create a main method to run this program. That's the only reason I'm creating this main method along with this normal method. Okay. So now if I have to call this particular method, okay, since it is a non-static method, it's a static main method is static method. So static methods can only access static stuff. So if I try to call this method, even after assigning some values, it will not take it, guys. Okay, it will not take it. Okay, will not be able to call it because this is a non-static method or instance method. Okay, static methods cannot call it instance method. Either I have to make this static, then I can call it. Okay, like this, if I make it static, okay, then I can call it, no problem. Okay, I have to make it static. That is one way. Or I have to create an object. If it is non-static, I have to create an object, and using the object reference, I have to call this method. For now, let's go with the static, which is easy because static methods can call the static methods. Main method compulsory need to be static. So to call this another method, I'll make it static so that I can call. So I'm passing some values 5, 4 here. 5 will go into A and 4 will go into B. Okay, 5 will go into A and 4 will go into B. And in the method, if I try to update the value, A's value as 9, nothing will happen. You see what happens in this case is 5 will go into A, 4 will go into B. And after that, I'm updating the value of A with 9. That means even though you pass 5, it doesn't matter, guys. Java will take 9 as the updated value, and 9 plus the initial value 4. 9 plus 4, 13. 13 will be printed in the output. Okay. Let's see whether 13 is getting printed in the output. You see 13 got printed. Why? Because here I am able to update the parameter value. Okay, though you are passing some value, but here this method is updating the parameter value, its own value. Okay, so you can update the value of the parameter in general, but the moment you add final here and final here, let's say final before any of the parameters or both of the parameters, whatever it is, you cannot update the value of this parameters anymore. In the method, you cannot use it. Already Java compiler is giving me an error, some kind of error. Final local variable cannot be assigned and all. I have to remove this. Okay. I should not be assigning any value to this parameter because this is a final parameter. Okay. It can be only assigned value while calling the method. Okay. When you're calling this particular method, you are passing 5, 4. These are the final values of these final variables. And later, if you try to update the value of this variable A or B, it is not going to happen. So this is what happens when you specify the final modifier before method parameters. So the answer is yes, it is possible to specify final modifier for the method parameters. But the only thing is that, okay, while calling that particular method only, you can pass the values, okay, as arguments. And after that, you cannot modify the values of that particular parameters, either inside the method or whatever it is, okay. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we create a variable inside a method having same name as method parameter in Java? The answer is no. Let's say there is a method, it contains some method parameters. Now inside that method, you are going to create a variable whose name is matching with one of the parameters of that particular method. Then is it possible in Java? The answer is no, guys. Why? Because Java treats the method parameters and the variables that are created inside the methods as local variables. Both are local variables. Local variables, when created inside the method, cannot have, okay, whether they be method parameters or whether they are created inside the method, they cannot have a duplicate name. There's only one time you can create a variable with a particular name. And if you are trying to create another variable with the same name, either it is a local variable created inside the method or it is a method parameter, Java is going to give you a compiler error for that. Okay. So let me practically demonstrate this one for you. For that, I'll switch to the Eclipse IDE. I'm going to create a new class. I'll just name this class as class T with some main method, for example. Doesn't matter whether you create or not. Now I'm going to create a method here. Here I'm going to create a method public void sample method. I'll say int a comma int b, let's say, okay, some two parameters for this particular method. Let's say there are two parameters. One of the parameter is having the name variable name as a and other parameter is having the variable name as b. Now inside this method, if you try to create a variable with the same name that parameter name matches with, okay, you are creating a local variable inside this method, right? A variable that is created inside the method in Java is called as a local variable. And if that particular local variable has the same name as a method parameter's name, you see Java compiler is already giving an error, compiler error saying duplicate local variable A, because this parameter is also considered as a local variable. You can use it. You see, inside the method, you can use it. Outside the method, you cannot access this parameter. Okay. If you try to access this outside, let's say I create one more method public void sample2, okay, sample2. And if I try to access this parameter of this particular method here, is it possible? No. Okay. This parameter will be accessed only in this method. That means it is a local variable indirectly. So when there is a local variable already created, if you try to duplicate that, it won't be possible. If you try to access that local variable that is a parameter in another method, it's, you see, Java compiler will give you an error saying that it's not visible or something, resolved or something. Okay. So it's not possible. So again, you are trying to create the same variable. Here local variable is already created in the form of parameter. Now you are trying to duplicate it by creating another local variable inside this method, which is not possible in Java, and you will get a compiler error by doing so. Duplicate local variable, compiler error you will get. Okay. So hope guys you got the error. So duplicate variable kind of error, right? What is the error? We got duplicate local variable. Okay, duplicate local variable kind of error will come for you. Okay, if you do so. So with practical demonstration, I have answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, explain the concept of variable hoisting in Java. Let me answer. First of all, in Java programming, variable hoisting is not possible. If you try to do so, you are going to get a compiler error. But where exactly it is possible? In JavaScript, it is possible. Okay, but in Java, it is not possible. Before understanding that, like it is possible in JavaScript and it's not possible in Java, how and all, first understand what is meant by variable hoisting. Okay, let me explain that first. So what is variable hoisting, which is supported in JavaScript but not in Java? Okay, so what is this variable hoisting? Okay, what is this variable hoisting, which is supported in JavaScript, guys? JavaScript, where you first say console.log of x, you will say, and you will do the declaration later, like where keyword x is equal to 9. Okay, you're declaring this variable later, but you are printing that variable before. So can you do the same thing in Java, where declaration, you can hoist it to the top of the code? You're hoisting the variable declaration to the top of the code. That means you are not declaring first and then using. You are using and then declaring. It's okay in JavaScript, guys. Okay, it's okay in JavaScript, where first you can use the variable and later you can declare it in the below lines. Because variable declaration is hoisted to the top of the code in JavaScript. This is what I call it as variable hoisting, or we call it as variable hoisting. But if you do the same thing in Java, it is not possible, guys. In Java, it's mandatory for you to first declare the variable and then print it out. Okay, system.out.println, and you can print it out. Okay, in Java, it is like this. Okay, if you try to do this in Java, like first you print it out and then you try to, you try to use it out and then try to declare it. This variable declaration cannot be hoisted to the top of the code in Java. Instead, Java will give you a compiler error. This is not possible in Java. This is not possible in Java, where Java will give you a compiler error, but it's possible in JavaScript. So variable hoisting is possible in JavaScript, but not in Java. Okay. So let me practically demonstrate this one so that you'll understand how variable hoisting is not possible in Java. I'll create a new class. Okay. So with main method and all. And let's say here, if I say int a is equal to 9 and a is equal to 9, and here I'll say system.out.println a, you see it will work fine without any problem. 9 will be printed, okay, without any problem. What if I take this to the above line? If I try to print this variable and I declare this in the next line, is it possible? You see, already Java is giving you a compiler error saying that a cannot be resolved. In Java, it is mandatory to first declare the variable before actually using it, okay? Before actually using it. But in JavaScript, it is possible to declare later. Even though you use it first, you can declare it later in the below lines, because the variable declaration will be hoisted to the top in JavaScript, but not in Java. This variable hoisting concept of variable declaration being taken to the top of the code is not there in Java, guys. It's only possible in JavaScript. So hope, guys, you got an answer. Okay. So explain the concept of variable hoisting in Java. If you get this kind of question in the interview, you have to simply say that it's not possible in Java, and this is the concept of variable hoisting, which is only possible in JavaScript. That too with the where keyword. Okay, you have to declare the variable with where keyword. And if you use another keywords like let keyword or whatever the keyword in JavaScript, it's not going to be done. But in Java, it is not at all possible. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can you initialize the final specified variable inside a constructor? The answer is yes. It is possible in Java to initialize a final specified variable inside a constructor. Basically, there are two ways in Java to initialize the final specified variable. First way is by initializing the variable in the line where it is declared and specified with that final modifier. Okay, in the same line you are initializing. The other way that most of the people doesn't know is, if you have not initialized that particular variable where you have declared it in the same line, you are not initializing it, where the final modifier is specified and it's declared in the same line if you are not initializing it. Then the other place where you can initialize that kind of final specified variable in Java is a constructor, guys. Okay, these are the only two ways. First way is the same line where it is declared and specified with final modifier. If that is not done so, you can initialize the final specified variable inside a constructor. That is the second place. Okay. So a lot of people know about the first thing, that is initializing the variable in the same line where it is declared and specified with the final modifier. But most of the people doesn't know that you can also initialize the final specified variables inside a constructor too if it is not initialized in the same line where it is declared. Okay. So let me practically demonstrate this one for you. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE. I'm going to create a new class for that. I'll just name this class as class V. Okay. Click on finish. Yeah, done. A class will be created in a while. And now I'm going to create a variable int a. You see, when I create a variable like int a, you see the Java is not asking me to initialize this variable. No compiler error, nothing. Everything looks fine. Okay, no problems. But the moment I specify the final modifier before this variable, the Java compiler errors kicks in, where it will ask you to initialize the variable. You see, it's not initialized. That's why you are getting the error. One way to initialize this variable is in the same line where you have declared it and specified with this final modifier. Like this, you can initialize. This is one way. Or if you don't want to initialize this here to overcome the problem, the other place is in Java programs, other place where you can initialize this final modifier specified variables is inside the constructors. So public constructors will not have return type. The name of the constructors will match with the name of the class. Need to match with the name of the class. And this is a constructor, guys. You see, I'm getting an error here. The error has switched from here to here because since I'm not initialized the variable here, now the Java is cleverly thinking that, so this guy has specified the final modifier before a variable. This guy has not initialized the variable here. So maybe he is thinking to initialize the variable inside a constructor. That's why the error, compiler error that was there here to initialize this variable has shifted to this constructor, guys. Over the mouse, you see, it's saying to initialize this inside the constructor. So if I say a is equal to 9 here or something, some value, you see, the error will be gone. Either you can initialize the variable in the same line where it is declared and specified with final modifier, or in Java, you can also initialize means what? Assigning the first value to the variable, okay? Inside the constructor. That also you can do. You cannot update the value. Okay, once you initialize, the task is done, guys. If you try to update the value, you are going to get a compiler error. You see, because this is the final means constant value. The value of this initialized value of this particular variable cannot be updated anymore. Okay, that's what final means, right? Either it has to be initialized in the line in which it is declared and specified with final modifier, or it has to be initialized inside the constructor. So hope, guys, with practical demonstration, you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can you assign decimal value to a variable which is declared with int data type in Java? Let me answer. Let's say in Java program, you have created a variable and declared that particular variable with int data type, and you are trying to assign a decimal value to that particular variable which is declared with int data type. Is that possible or not? The answer is no, guys. If you try to do so in Java, you will get a compiler error saying that type mismatch cannot convert from double to int. That's what you will get. Okay, this is what is a compiler error message from Java you are going to get. Let me practically demonstrate this for you. You can only store integer value into a variable which is declared with int data type. Okay, but you cannot store decimal value into that. Okay, so fine, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE and create a new class. And I'll just say class W, let's say some random name, main method I'll create. Then here I'm going to declare and create a variable with int data type. And to this particular variable, if I try to assign a decimal value, let's say 9.9, immediately Java compiler is going to give me an error saying type mismatch cannot convert from, this is a double literal value that you are assigning to a variable which is declared with int data type. This value is incompatible with the data type that for which this variable is declared with. Okay, so there is no way. Okay, so fine. So what you can do is one way is like you assign a proper integer value to that. Okay, that is one way. And to overcome the error, what are the things? You cannot assign a decimal value to a variable which is declared within data type. And other suggestion that Eclipse IDE is clearly giving you is, you can cast it to int or you change it to double here. Okay, the proper data type you provide. You declare this variable instead of int, you provide double data type. So you can assign a decimal value to a variable which is declared with double data type. But if you try to assign a decimal value to a variable which is declared within data type, you're going to get a compiler error. Another way is that I can convert this into int typecast. Okay, just by providing the circular brackets and in the data type in which you want to convert this. If it is convertible, if this decimal value can be convertible into data type value, compatible value, then it is okay. Now it is convertible. That's why the compiler error has been gone. But if you print out the value, what will be printed? 9.9 will be printed or 9 will be printed. Okay, this decimal value will be cut off. Okay, when you typecast it, the decimal value will be taken off and the remaining 9 value will be assigned to the variable a, and here a will be printed as 9. Just run this code and see that in the output you will get 9. The decimal part will be taken off. Okay, so but the straightforward answer for this question is no, guys. You cannot assign a decimal value directly to a variable which is declared within data type in Java. When you try to do so, you're going to get a compiler error saying type mismatch cannot convert from double to int. So hope guys you got an answer for this question with practical demonstration in this session. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can you initialize final specified variable inside a method in Java? The answer is no. We cannot initialize the final specified variable inside a method. There are only two ways in Java to initialize a variable which is specified with final modifier. That is, first way is you have to initialize in the same line where that particular variable is declared and specified with final modifier. The second way is you have to create a constructor, and inside the constructor you can initialize. But if you want to initialize the final specified variable inside a method, then it is not possible. Let me practically demonstrate this one for you so that you will be able to get the answer for this question in a better way. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE, and here I'm going to create a new class. So I'll just name this class with some random name. And with main method, I'll create. That's okay. Fine. Now, here directly under the class, I'm going to create a variable. So when I declare this particular variable with some data type, you see I'm not getting any compiler error so far. The moment I specify final modifier before this variable, Java will give you a compiler error saying this particular variable need to be initialized. Now the question is, can we initialize this particular variable inside a method? I'll try to create a method, public void sample method I'll create, and I'll try to, initialize this variable here. Initializing means what? Initializing a variable means assigning the first value to the variable. Okay. The first initial value to the variable, if you are assigning, that is called as initializing. If I'm trying to initialize some value to this variable, you see, Java compiler is still giving me an error saying you cannot assign or initialize this variable here. Okay, kind of stuff is coming. So inside the method, I cannot initialize. That's not possible. So the answer is no here. Okay. Can we initialize final specified variable inside a method in Java? The answer is no. It's not possible to initialize a variable inside a method. Okay. A variable specified with final modifier inside a method, we cannot initialize. So what are the other two ways where we can initialize this final specified variable? The same line where this particular variable is declared and specified with final modifier, the same line I can initialize. This is first way. You see error is gone. Okay. I'm able to initialize this. Okay. It's in the same line. If not in the same line, if I have to still initialize, then I have to create a constructor public, and the constructor will not have a return type, and the name of the constructor should match with the name of the class. Okay. So fine. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm trying to initialize this variable a here. A is equal to 9. You see, it will be possible. Error is gone. Compiler error is gone, and Java is allowing me to initialize the final modified specified variable inside a constructor, but not inside. The same thing if I move into a method. Okay, move into a method. If I move that particular code into a method, initializing code, You see, it's not working here, but inside the constructor, it is working. Okay. Either you have to initialize this variable in the same line where it is declared and specified with final modifier, or you have to initialize that inside a constructor. Okay. Those are the two possibilities in Java where you can initialize a final specified variable. Okay. So hope guys, with practical demonstration, you got the answer for this question. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, how to name a constructor in Java. Let me answer. So in Java, if you have to create a constructor and name it, you have to make sure that the name of the constructor matches with the name of the class. You cannot give any other name. Okay, if you have to create a constructor inside a class, the name of the constructor should match with the name of the class. If you give any other name other than the class name for naming a constructor, that won't become a constructor. That won't be considered as a constructor anymore. Okay. So with practical demonstration, I'm going to answer this question for you. For that, I'll switch to this Eclipse IDE where I'll go to this project. Just give me a second and demonstrate to you practically. Okay. So here I'm going to create a new class. Right click, new class. So it's loading up. That's fine. Here we got a dialog. Let me give the class name, class A, with some main method I'll create. Click on finish. It got created. So let's wait for the class to get created with some main method and all. That's fine. We are not worried about the main method here. Now here inside this class, I want to create a constructor. So I'll write public. You can write anything without public also it works. Public space, give some space, and you should not write any return type. Constructors won't have any return type. For example, this main method has a return type here, but constructor won't have any return type. So no return type. And directly we have to give the name of the constructor here. But make sure that if you give any other name while creating constructor, it won't become a constructor. You have to make sure that the name of the constructor should be same as the name of the class. I just copy pasted the name of the class as the name of the constructor. This is what a constructor is. Okay. If you give another name, there's no more a constructor. You see, you're getting an error. Return type for the method is missing. It's considering this as a method. It's saying that you forgot to mention the return type. Once I mention the return type, the error is gone because this is not a constructor anymore. It's a method having a return type and a different name from the class name. So it's a method. It's not a constructor. What if I remove this return type and change the name of this particular thing which matches with the name of the class? Then it becomes a constructor. Okay. So hope guys you got an idea and answer for this question with practical demonstration in this session. That is how to name a constructor in Java. So we have to name the constructor in such a way that the name of the constructor matches with the name of the class. Okay. Name of the constructor should be same as the name of the class. If you try to alter it, you are going to get a compiler error and asking you to provide a return type. I showed you practically, right? And when you provide the return type, that becomes a method, not a constructor. Okay. So if you want to create a constructor and if you want to name the constructor, make sure the name of the constructor is matching with the name of the class. Okay. Is same as the name of the class. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye. Hello all. Welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, can we type return keyword inside a method whose return type is void in Java? Let me answer. Let's say there is a Java program. Inside the Java program, there is a method whose return type is mentioned as void. That means the method is not going to return anything. But still, is there a possibility of writing the return keyword or mentioning the return keyword in such kind of method whose return type is mentioned as void? What's the answer? The answer is yes. It is possible to still write the return keyword inside a method of the program whose return type is mentioned as void. There will not be any compiler error, but there are some rules for that. Okay. If you really want to write the return keyword in a method Java programs whose return type is mentioned as void, okay, Java will only allow you to write such kind of return keyword when that return keyword immediately ends with a semicolon symbol and that return keyword is not going to return any data. Okay, we can write the return keyword that doesn't return any data by directly ending the return keyword or statement in that method having the void return type with semicolon symbol. Then that is possible, guys. Let me practically demonstrate this one for you. For that, I'll create a new class. I'll just name this class as class B. Okay. So I'm going to create a method, fresh method inside this class. Public void. I'll just name this method as sample. Any name you can give. Now, as you can clearly see that the return type of this particular method is mentioned as void. Void means it doesn't return anything. The method is not going to return anything. But still, can I write the return statement here? Even though this method is not returning anything, can I mention the return statement here? Yes, only if the return statement immediately ends with a semicolon and the return statement doesn't return actual data. You see, it's not returning any data. It's a normal return statement which is directly ending with or immediately ending with a semicolon. Okay. So it is possible, guys. Okay. Whenever this return keyword encounters, okay, when this particular method is getting executed and this return keyword is getting encountered, the execution stop there itself. Where in real time we use this return statement and how it is possible for us to, in a particular method having the void specified, that means the method is not going to return anything, but you are still mentioning the return. How it is possible? Because this return statement is a normal return statement which is not returning any data, and how it is used in real time, I am going to explain that. Okay, for example, here I'll say int a is, or some logic I'll write b is equal to 4. Okay, then I'll write some logic like this. Okay, if a is okay less than b, then write this return statement. Otherwise, if a is not less than b, then do some print out like a plus b, you add it and print it out. Okay, that is 9 value will be printed only when a is less than b. 5 is less than 4, then only 9 will be printed. Sorry, if 5 is less than b, that is 5 less than b means if it will become true, but here it is becoming false, so it will print 9 here. Okay, but if a is really less than b, if a value that I'm passing to a is really less than b, then it will not print anything. Okay, we'll see that. Okay, we'll call this method and see what's happening now. So for that, I'll create a main method here. Let's say public static void, or you can simply in Eclipse side there is shortcut main control space and press enter. You see, main method will be created on the fly. Now, in order to call this method, there are two ways I can make this method static. So I can directly call this method because static methods can call the static. Static methods can only access the static stuff. So I have to make this method static. So then static main method is static. So this method also need to be static to be directly called. I can now call the method. Okay. Simply I'll call the method, guys. That's it. To run the program, I have created the main method. Otherwise, I don't need the main method. So if I run this program, what will happen? This logic will run and 5 less than 4 is false. So to go to the else block and print a plus b, that is 9 will be printed in the output. Okay. Run as Java application. 9 will be printed in the output in this case. Okay. 9 will be printed. And here one more thing I'll do. I'll just say system.end of sample method I'll write. So this case we'll try again. Okay, we'll try this again. 9 will be printed and end of the sample method also will be printed. End of sample method. In case of okay, 5 a is not a, this condition is becoming false means we are going to else block and a plus b is happening, 5 plus 4 is happening, and 9 is getting printed and end of this program is happening. But what if I give 3 here? In such case, what will happen? You see, main method will call this method and definitely 3 is less than 4. Immediately return statement will happen and none of these things will be printed, guys. Neither 9 will be printed nor end of the sample method will be printed. Okay. So the method execution will stop here itself. Okay. It doesn't matter. It's not about if else block. This return keyword or statement will stop the execution of the method and go back to the method calling statement immediately. Okay, without worrying about even end of the sample method also will not be printed in this case. Okay, here I'll say end of main method. Okay, end of main method, so that we'll get some output. Okay, run this. This time you'll get end of main method. That's it. Okay, what happened here? The method has been called. 3 is less than 4 is true. Return keyword has been turned up, and because of which it has stopped the execution of the main the sample method and went back to the sample, and then end of the main method got printed. What if it is greater than 5 if I give? In that case, you see all the statements like 9, end of the sample method, end of main method, everything will be printed. But in case of this value becoming 3, you see return keyword is getting executed, and because of which execution will stop there itself, and the control will go back to the method calling statement, and the remaining statements will get executed. Okay. So hope guys you got an idea how we can still mention a return keyword inside a method in the Java programs where method return type is mentioned as void. So with practical demonstration, I've answered this question for you. So that's all for this session. Thank you. Bye-bye.